a world where we have everything and it's still not enough, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there's more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old push your way through and claim the deeper, more meaningful life that's calling you.
That's what we invite you to explore with us.
We're your hosts,
Stephanie Allen
and Maren and and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Yay!
Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast, and welcome to 2025. We're super excited today because one of the things that Stephanie and I are very present to is the changing of the guard, if you will, into a more, everything has been so serious and very heavy in our world. And one of the things that we've been working with is that feminine aspect of play. And so what we decided we wanted to do for our first podcast of the year is invite some of our team members on. So you'll get to meet a couple of our team members and talk about what it means for us as soulful leaders to come from a place of being a little bit lighter, from that, how do we bring lightness into our lives, into the lives of our teams, into the lives of our families? And what does that mean for us as leaders?
I think this is a really great, poignant question, because for myself, when I think of play, sometimes I've been told it's just like I'm winging it. You're just kind of farting around, And unfortunately, it's like we tend to throw out the playfulness and the lightheartedness and lose the intentionality of why we're here. And I think there's a way that we can do both. And I'm laughing because Maren,
right?
Playing around with that screen. I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone's moving.
I'm playing with the video. Speaking of playing.
Yeah.
So we have some really playful team members. So we invited them on, and I'd love to introduce you because I'm super excited. Dave, who has been a super Dave, who has been with me on a team for like almost 10 years now.
Yes.
And has a very playful, silly way of being, and yet very intentional, very, moving towards the goal, getting things happen. And I am super excited. So we want to introduce you and find out a little bit more about you and how you stay lighthearted and intentional. And then we also have wonderful Lori. Lori is new with us in the last year and is doing a lot of the transcribing and of our soulful leaders, and has come to me a couple years ago. And I find you so delightful and so curious, and I don't want to say childish. It's like childlike wonder. Like I wonder, and I wonder what, and I wonder if this, and I just think you also bring such a lovely lightheartedness. So I want to welcome both of you, and super excited.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, you just reminded me. It's been got to be close to 10 years now that we've been working together, or I've been working with you on certain projects over the many years, and doing all kinds of fun things, and none of which involve podcast production. But now I'm your podcast producer, and having fun with that. And we've got a lot of episodes under our belts, and it's been awesome for me because I get exposed to all that goodness that you guys are creating and putting out there every podcast. And so I'm very, very pleased because I know, like, I'm kind of jumping the ship here a little bit, but the whole thing about working with this material that you guys produce is it's transforming who I am. I'm not the same guy I was 10 years ago when we first met, but being exposed and you become a part of your environment, right? And what a great environment to become a part of. So, yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here.
That is so exciting, Dave. I mean, I think what you said is like, you're not the same person as you were 10. I don't think I am either. I know I've said that to Maren, like the two of us, no one is. But it's been an intentional and yet playful unfolding, hasn't it?
Oh, very playful, very intentional, and very encouraging and very inspirational. I mean, every positive word you can think of, it's all in there. Yeah.
So our teacher says something that's like, unless you're choosing your destiny, you'll be living your fate. And I do think that most people will look back over their 10 years and be like, wow, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. The question that I have is this the person you wanted to become? Did you do it? So we keep using the word intentionality. And when I think about that for myself, that's the quote that comes into my head is from our teacher of like, am I choosing each day, each moment, who I want to become? And what does that mean for me? And so when I was listening to you, Dave, that's what I heard was like, like you become the people, what is that quote? You become, the sum total of the five people that you're with. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so it's like,
yeah.
who are you choosing to be around? And the fact that, like, I know I'm choosing to be around you guys, which excites me. And I think that's what Stephanie was pointing to is like, wow, I've changed a lot too. And it's because of being around you guys.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes the intentionality is very, even the intentionality is intentional in that you set the intention, that you're very consciously making that decision. But a lot of times it's just who you want to be inside in your heart of hearts. And so you naturally flow in that direction, and you naturally cling to those kind of people, and you naturally absorb. So there are people in your life that they suck the energy out of your life, and there are people in your life that inject energy into your life. And you naturally want to be with people that are full of energy, full of wisdom, and giving you and feeding your soul with all of that goodness. But you're doing it back. It's a two-way street. It's not that you're absorbing it all and not reciprocating it. It really is a symbiotic relationship between the two or three or four or five, however many people are in your circle of influence or your immediate circle of influence, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we feed each other, don't we?
Yeah, we do, and I've seen the same thing from Lori too. I know a little bit about her past too, with what she's been doing, she's very much of a like a giver and a same kind of thing with her energy for sure.
Hmm. Thank you, Dave. I think that that's a good starting point for me to consider is this is what has brought me into the soulful leader realm is matching with people that are similar and heart like minded and that want to lead with integrity and intention, over ego and control. And I've had a lot of great various experiences in my life that has solidified my want and my purpose for seeking out people and situations that are going to support not only ourselves and the people that we get to either lead or work alongside with, that we're also going to ripple out into this much needed world and realm of being with people in a good way and leading from your heart. Um, we talk about being light and what makes us light, and the work of being light in this life is tough work. It's very uh, you have to be very intentional and to always be mindful and you have to take care of your emotional health in not just your physical health, but your emotional health is so, so important. And so yeah, so that just it leads me to that what makes us light. And I have, some things that I think about and heaviness comes to me a lot is this, when what makes you heavy in this life is just
Mm.
right on the flip side of what you two are saying about making it fun and creative. When things get heavy, that's really when we need to make things fun and light. And Maren and Stephanie, you got such a good take on it. It's a good follow. You were great follow through people for me to have met when I did, and to join to join your your I guess your revolution evolution
Oh, I like
of
that. Revolution,
intentionality.
evolution.
Yes, so very happy to be here and sharing in this experience and supporting the work that you both do. Very much in alignment with what's needed.
Mm.
So you have a lot of experience in working with lots of different types of leadership teams. And when you say, I'm going to point to the emotional health that you were talking about, because I'm hearing more and more people recognize that, which makes me very happy, because it seems like until, the last maybe 5 or 10 years, it's all been about the outer, and people are starting to realize that there's a whole inner component. And as you have worked through over the years with different teams, what have you noticed around that because I think that that's really intimately connected to whether you feel overly heavy or you can actually lighten up, and kind of the things that we were talking about.
Are you speaking more to the emotional intelligence part or the emotional health?
What do you want to chat
Oh,
about?
because there's, the two are for me obviously interlinked. When you have uh, a good foundation for being healthy emotionally. Like I just watched a parenting video the other day, and it talked about the difference that it makes when we teach kids how to emotionally regulate themselves, what a difference it makes. And, I think about some of the temper tantrums that I've seen at my workplaces, and I'm thinking, oh, that might have been helpful. And I think we all can speak to those stories of not being served as well in how we are parented around our feelings, because it's multi-generational. It is what it is. But you tie that in with intelligence too. Like seriously, I didn't think I was smart until I was like intelligent smart until I was in my 30s, because I didn't enjoy academics at all. I didn't learn well that way. And what I discovered is that if you have emotional intelligence, and some people I have higher and lower, I think like intellectual intelligence, if there was a way to measure it, that's not good or bad. It just is on a scale. I think when you focus on emotional intelligence as well, because we can always improve, those two things in the workplace would change the workplace. If people had the ability to know how to regulate themselves, and they had the mindset and the want to become a little bit smarter with their feelings, like, just be even learning skills like how to have a fight fairly. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah,
People could
how
actually
to be
argue.
how to actually be okay in conflict and stay
Yes,
present.
yes,
Yeah, I wanna even ask you one more question about emotional regulation, because it
sure.
is part of, and and maybe even some of the things that both you and Dave, and well, all of us that do to help emotionally regulate ourselves, because I think a lot of times, at least what I would had learned, what I thought was emotional regulation would be stuff your emotions. This is not a place to feel. Like, if you're going to do that, you go home or you go get a therapist. But this is, grow up, toughen it out. That seems like that's that hard place of just like, take your emotions and put them on a shelf over here, instead of saying, maybe there's another way. It's obviously not, I'm going to like blow up and have a meltdown, like the temper tantrum, which it happens at work time. You're like, okay, I'm working with a 5-year-old right now, and they didn't get their candy. And and I've been that way too. Like, I've been that way too. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit more, Lori, Dave, how you work with that. Like, what do you do? What's your practice? What's your presence that you do when it gets emotionally uncomfortable?
I just have to.
I'm happy to.
I
Yeah.
just sorry. I just have to produce one of the podcasts, and it kind of puts me right back where I belong. Sorry, go
You
ahead, Lori.
No, I was going to say if you had something, Dave, I'd be happy to let you go. But in the meantime, what do I do? I was a I'm a parent. I mean, she's 30 now, but I always kind of go back to those basics. And I think, you know, like you said, I'm dealing with a 5-year-old right now. There's obviously a lot going on that I can't respond to. And even if I've become reactive, it would always come back to just having the idea that this isn't about me. This is something that they're obviously experiencing, and kind of, be polite, and then circle back. if that's needed, or address it in the moment. But it always comes with, and this is my secret tip. This was my number one parenting, yes, success, and it works for all my relationships. Acknowledge people. Just
Mm,
acknowledge them. You know, we want to be seen. I mean, there's that quote, we want to be seen, we want to be heard. And even if it's coming out sideways, it's still important to acknowledge. So just a skill of staying back. Um, I can see that you're really upset right now, or I'm sorry that I've upset you, or just whatever feels good in the moment to say. But as long as they
mm.
have that flicker of, oh, okay, I'm getting acknowledged here, then you know that you've got a more common place to come from.
Yeah, instead of shaming it, right? Like, "You're really
Yeah,
upset, this isn't a good place, you need to just take this somewhere else." That would be
yeah,
shaming
Or
instead of
yeah.
ignoring it.
saying
Yeah.
or ignoring
Or
it, yeah.
ignoring.
Yeah.
Yes,
Those
yeah.
that's so true. That's brilliant actually. I like that very
Excuse
much.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Y
always
yeah, 'cause
acknowledge.
we ignore it in ourselves, and so, we ignore it, which is another way of stuffing it. "I'll just ignore this, it'll go away," but it doesn't, it gets locked into our tissues, and I always say, then we have issues in our tissues, and then, if we don't voice it, if we don't we forget about it, and then it becomes buried into our unconscious, and we don't know why we feel off. We don't know why things aren't working well, or we don't know why all of a sudden we start having stomach aches or headaches or some sort of physical pain. And we're like, I don't know. I didn't hurt myself, but I woke up and my knee hurts. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I just rolled over in bed. That's my own, instead of saying, maybe there's something in there that's ready and safe enough to come out. Can I work with this? And I'm bringing this in because I think, as you say, Dave, you mentioned this too, is that it's like having a culture, a workplace culture, like anything heals when we have a healthy environment. And there's a big talk about cultures in our workplaces, or in our communities, or in our families. And it's like, if there isn't a culture of feeling safe, that, okay, I can address this with somebody, I feel safe, they're not going to shame me or blame me, they can hold the space to really hear what I'm going through, and just like you said, Lori, acknowledge me. I think this is so key. And like, even like, I'm curious with the two of you, like, how did you pick? Did you pick the workplace, or did it find you? I'm curious from your perspective, because I have a perspective, but I'm curious what your perspective is.
So I think the world is conspiring in my favor personally, and I think for most people they're pretty much getting what they ask for. So if your self talk, if the things that are going on in your head are negative, you're attracting that to you. And if you're being positive and you're very good about how you deal with adversity and what you expect to happen, or how you expect to fall in it and come out smelling like roses, well, that's what's going to happen. You're going to create that reality because that's what you're thinking, that's what you're intending. So that's what I was saying earlier. Sometimes your intentions are intentional and sometimes they're not. And when they're not intentional, it's because of what you're saying to yourself, what you're thinking in your head, the thoughts that you have on a regular basis. And there's so many ways of dealing with that to get out of that cycle if you do tend to be that kind of a negative person that has that issue. So really, you do change who you are, and then you start really everything is going great because wonderful things keep happening to you. The
I
world is
love I
definitely
love that. I love what
yeah,
you're saying with that.
the world is
Yeah.
definitely out to is conspiring in my favor and your favor and everybody's favor if that's how they see it. The whole thing about the most important decision you have to make is whether or not you live in a friendly universe. That was from one of your podcasts recently. I love that quote from Einstein.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, I found that also, like we're talking about emotional regulation and emotional intelligence. And thank you, Lori, for actually bringing up the fact that those are two different things. They're related, and they are two different things. And I think oftentimes that we go to our past and think we have to fix ourselves, and there is a certain amount of working through past issues that needs to happen. And when you decide that you live in a friendly universe and you know where you're going, you actually are holding your intentionality like really consciously and your attention on your intention. It's amazing how much of that stuff falls away that allows you to be lighter and allows you to, it's like it processes without you having to go through it again it's like oftentimes Stephanie will talk about like we re-injure ourselves trying to go back through the issues, right? The issues in our tissues instead of just being able to let it go. And how powerful it would be for us to get to the place where, okay, if we need to go through it, great. And how much of it do we actually not need to go through again? And we can just allow it to let it go.
Yeah, it becomes a habit of suffering on our suffering, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get something out of it. I always say, if you can't let something go, emotional, that's a drug, man. I'll tell you, you
Yeah.
get emotionally connected to something. And if you're not ready or willing to let something go, then you're probably addicted to something
Yeah, well, there's a
internally.
reason. Like you said,
Internally.
Yeah,
there's something that we
internal.
get out of it.
Yeah,
There's a
Yeah.
reward. And so then
yeah, that's a good way
becoming
of putting it.
right, becoming aware of what is the reward that I actually get out of that.
Mm.
Because we do know what we need to do in order to change something, and oftentimes we're just not ready or willing or able to do it because we're still getting so much of a reward out of the old way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, I always say it's like, when you're emotionally regulated, you're going to get attention. Outward attention, probably not in the way that you want it most times. And inward attention, meaning it's going to give you that internal drug, that tonic. It's not even a tonic, it's like a cocktail,
Yeah, it's a
essentially.
cocktail of
It's a
drugs.
cocktail of
Exactly.
drugs.
Yep.
So, but I often will say, well, what's that costing you?
Mm.
Peace of mind, relationships, your job, health. Like there's a lot of costs that, there's a lot of things you're sacrificing. And is that truly what you want to sacrifice in order to get attention or in order to get a high and feel lighter? Is there another way?
Yeah, because you end up on that high, and so you might feel lighter. It just is, it's a false lightness because it's not sustainable. You end up on a roller coaster, right? So it's just like any other addiction. We think that that addictions are only outer, and we don't realize that the inner cocktail, like the drugs you were talking about, you're actually mentioning the inner cocktail of drugs, of the dopamine and the serotonin and all of the things that kick in when we have the adrenaline rush, right? So we put ourselves on that. And I love what Dave was saying earlier, because when you can self regulate, when you can actually get to that point of, you know what, things are going well and I don't need the drama to make it happen.
Good. Yeah.
Right. And then you can that's where I was talking about, is like, then you can let some of that stuff go and not have to re-experience it to get the cocktail of drugs and emotions going in your system, right? And you can actually have it's not, the highs and lows are not bad. Again, not bad, good, bad, right, wrong. It just is, do we need to have such highs and such lows? It can be a positive, ongoing, ups and downs on a slight, like a hill instead of a mountain.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I kind of have the visual of walking on the razor's edge, right? Like you're trying to maintain this balance, this, and I don't want to say straight line, but it's like you're a witness to both the highs and the lows without ricocheting into one or the other. That doesn't mean you don't feel them. You might
I
feel them
love that.
fully, but there's an anchor in your center. And that's, to me, is that lightheartedness of like when I can let go that I'm responsible for everything and that it must be my fault and I can't do this, or whatever, all that like what Dave was saying, that inner narrative. That's when I get ricocheted off into one way or the other. Or, oh, I'm so great. I'm so awesome. My life is wonderful. It's then I'm ping pong. But if I can hold that center, is that, I'm a spiritual being having a human moment here right now. and there's something greater beyond me, like what Einstein says, I'm part of a friendly universe. And I'm more than just my emotional body. I'm more than just my mental. So, and I'm more than my physical. So there's a reason I'm being here. What might this be teaching me? Then I have that anchor. And I'm curious as to when I say have an anchor, like for those that are listening too, like what is your anchor? What is it that allows you to stay present to the emotional uncertainties and the roller coasters, but at the same time has that anchor of love and kindness and peace within yourself? What is it? What is that practice? And I'm asking you all here too, like Lori and Dave and Maren, what is that anchor for you?
Sometimes you have to go through a bad time, or you have to hurt in order to be motivated to make things better. So you don't have to hurt to make things better. But when you're comfortable, you tend to coast, and there's no reason to make things better because you're fine, right? But when things hurt, when you get into that kind of a dark part of your life or something where things aren't going well, or at least you don't think they are, and you again, you're creating your reality, so you start thinking the dark thoughts and you're creating more and more of it. Well, when you end up doing is you're either going to go fight or flight. You're going to go one way or the other, and hopefully you don't go down. You realize you've hit bottom, or you're close to the bottom, and it's time to turn your life around. And I know this happens to a lot of people. It's very common. In I mean, everybody has the best of times and the worst of times in their lifetime, hopefully, because you really need those extremes. But when you're ready to get out of your hole, and when you're ready to make things better, or even wherever you are, it doesn't have to be in a hole, to make things better. We all aspire to be better. Then it becomes important how you think, where you're at, where you're going, and to recognize that with intentionality. And again, I go back to the self-talk and your inner narrative. Make it,
Mhm.
make it better, and go in that direction. And there's so many resources like this podcast that are out there for that exact reason. So it's not like it's hard to find. It's just a question of aiming in that direction.
So
Well,
that's what you do, is you tune into the people who are helping along those lines of either a podcast or a YouTube video or something that, like, from your own experience of, when I tune that, it changes my thoughts, it changes the person that I am, and I can get out of my negative self-talk, or whatever hole
Correct.
I've dug for myself,
Yeah.
or life has thrown at me, right?
Right. Yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
I'm also hearing you too, Dave, saying, that there's a self-reflection moment of like where you stop and you just look inward and going, okay, what am I thinking right now that this is
Mm.
creating? Like I hear that inward reflection in you,
Yeah. Yep.
that's your anchor. Like you turn in and go, okay, what's going on here? What's this calling me?
Yeah.
And what am I thinking or believing right now?
Right. And it's the intentionality of changing that, of turning that around. If you don't like what you're thinking, if you don't like what you're saying, you intentionally you stop, like you literally cut it right off, and you say, I'm going to change this. And even if it sounds crazy, and in fact it's even better if it does sound crazy, the funnier it sounds, or the more ridiculous it sounds, think or say the exact opposite of whatever negative thought you just had, and go in that totally different direction. Just do it, and it totally negates the whole emotional drag, the whole drama of the negative situation. Whether it's somebody that road rage, somebody really drives you crazy, so literally speaking, drives you crazy, and you know everybody gets that, they want to knock the guy off the road or something like that. That happens a lot, actually, especially daily commuters. And so instead of having that thought, change it completely, or turn it around 100%. And the crazier it sounds, the better. And don't blame yourself for what happened, and don't blame them for what happened. Just find a way to, what's the exact opposite of what I was just going to say, or what I was just going to think, or what I was
Mhm.
just, wherever I was going with my thoughts. And that changes the whole perspective. but it's really when you reflect on yourself and how much you love yourself, how much you believe in yourself, how much you think you're worth,
Mhm.
self worth, self love, self everything, all of that, and everything that you own, and everything that everyone you talk to, and all your friends and everybody. It's just everything about your life can be turned
And
around quite easily, and that's talking about anchors. That's what I did to get myself out of my dark spot. But also, I continue to do that, and I still notice it today. Every now and again, something creeps in, but it's more or less a habit to go to the positive instead of the negative for any given situation.
I'm
You're
going to
the in
point out, go ahead.
I was gonna say you're like an inner ninja.
Well,
Yeah, internet, exactly. But it all comes with practice, and it doesn't take long. It
and what I
doesn't
want to
take
point
long.
out is that you use the word, I go to the positive. I'm going to use a slightly different word. You go to the playful. And that's what we
I,
started with.
yeah,
And one of the things, and it does take practice to be playful. We're trained out of it. And it takes imagination. One of the things that Stephanie talks a lot about is the fact that healing happens on the right side of the brain. And that's the creative, the imaginative, the playful place. And Dave, you're beautiful at that. Part of the reason that we wanted to have you on today. And I think that people heard that and you could hear that and just like, okay, I think the exact opposite. Even understanding what the exact opposite is, that takes imagination and
yeah, it does.
play.
Actually, it does. Yeah,
It
Yeah.
really does. And that's a great exercise for us going into this next year of like, what might it be like just playing with what is the opposite of whatever's going on?
yeah, yeah,
So thanks for that.
Yeah,
yeah.
well said, Maren. Like, instead of saying, because we can be positive and not really feel like, I'm looking at Lori here, who's saying, it's time to have that emotional regulation, that emotional intelligence. We can positivity ourselves right out of feeling and healing too. And so I'm glad you made that awareness, Maren, with Dave, is that, yeah, you actually, Dave, you go to the playfulness. That kind of does a pattern interrupt in your brain,
Exactly.
Mm.
and you laugh. It's like, ha, it's like the superhero Dave comes in, and I'm sure it's like this complete creative, chaotic comic strip inside your head that's like busting through. But it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really real key point. Thank you.
It's fun
Thank
to be
you.
me, actually. Yeah, exactly.
So Lori, is there something that you go to? Do you have a go-to anchor to kind of short circuit or change the pattern that's going on?
Well, I love what Dave said, and I highly relate to it. I've just been through a book called Positive Intelligence, and I'm going to gap out at the author's name, but I can follow up with you if you need it. But he talked about having the judger here and then the sage kind of here. And it's the judge that kind of puts all of these thoughts into your head and it's the first one to come up. And I firmly believe that. I know our typical ego response to anything is usually like shields up and but just to allow that sage voice to come in and to have that playfulness come in. And what I love about an anchor for me is that I don't feel like I have a one all done all because they don't always fit in every situation. Because my one all and done all is nature and being out in nature and being able to be active in nature, whether it's like slow walk or a good climb. Nature immediately soothes everything in me and grounds me. But the reality is that I can't always have it. So I like having, you know, several things that I can turn to. I was just experiencing a situation out with family and not enjoying their conversation too much. And I thought, oh, geez, what do I do for myself right now? Because I want to feel good and I want to feel grounded. And it was a simple turning to the sun, my face to the sun, and just breathing in a moment. So sometimes they have to come up on the fly, but knowing that I have the ability to be anchored is what saves me.
That's a good angle,
Mm,
though. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love
Thank you.
that. I love hearing other people what they do. And early in the conversation, Dave, you use the word things happen naturally. And I find that when we can really listen to our wisdom, it does happen naturally. And yet we're not taught to listen to our wisdom. So when we can emulate somebody else, like you have a great practice that you have, and like what Lori just shared, we start to be able to tune into ourselves more and go, oh, that might be something. Even if I take exactly what you did and then I do it for a little bit and then I realize, oh, wait, my version is a little bit different, or
Yeah.
that didn't work for me. What else might work for me? And there's a playful aspect to that too. And as adults, we're in this, we get stuck in this right, wrong, good, bad of like, oh, I did it wrong. It didn't work for me. I did it wrong. I tried Dave's thing. It didn't work for me. I did it wrong. And instead of doing that, instead of going to that place of that didn't work for me, how else could I play with it?
Yeah.
And allowing ourselves that space.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Well said.
I know.
Everybody's different for sure, and everybody's story is different. Everybody's background's different, and where everybody's going is different.
Yeah.
So everything behind you and everything in front of you is all different. And so what works for me may not work for you exactly the same way. But it's the concept, and find your sun to face. Whatever it is that you want to do to get out of it. Just the fact that you're looking for it, you're already in the right direction. You're
Yeah.
already on the right path.
Well
If you're
said.
consciously starting to look for, how can I interrupt that pattern? How can I go in that direction? How can I face the sun, or whatever it is that, I mean, that's beautiful. I love that nature, the whole thing. Yeah. So,
You
but
know,
it's
and
different for everybody. That's good. Yeah.
I think when we all come together too and we share our own inner processes, but whether, where we're stuck and where it's flowing, we learn not only for ourselves, like we go, "Oh yeah, that's right." Because when someone asks a question, "Hey, where's your anchor? How do you find your anchor?" That makes you self-reflect. It makes you actually kind of go in and go, "Huh, how do I self-reflect? What does that mean? What is that anchor?" And then when you share it, you're not only anchoring it at a deeper level for yourself again, you're actually distilling it. You're giving those that are in your environment an opportunity to hear a different way that they can then kind of adopt into their life in their own unique way. And this is why I say this, that we do need each other. And in my cultural upbringing of what I've learned is that to be a leader, you had to have control. You don't let other people, take control. And I think that is a bunch of crap for me. It doesn't work. It's like I never say people work for me. I say we all work together. And it's like saying my right arm is better than my left arm, or my feet are better than my hands. I'm like, that's ridiculous. They all have different they all have different purposes. I need them for different things, and when we all work together is when we have the most holistic full possibility. And that's
Absolutely.
how I see leadership, is that really my anchor is like how I lead myself is how I lead other people, and how I allow myself to be led. And
Mm.
if I can stay curious and in wonder that there is actually something greater, the friendly universe, the loving God, or whatever, someone else believes in, but I believe in God and the universe, a loving being that has actually put me in this body for a reason and brought people into my life for a reason. And if I stay curious and wonder about that in the friendly universe, and it becomes playful. I become, oh, this is interesting. I wonder what's going to happen next. And how can we do this? And what has this person brought me? And what have I brought them? And what could happen together? And that's how I see us as a team, is that, wow, like, why would I ever want to do it alone? Seriously, it's a heck of a lot more fun. Like a lot more, and a lot more. Well, not only is it easier in some ways. I'm not saying it's easy, because there's a lot of inner work that I have to do to work with that, but it actually is easier and surprisingly productive and uplifting that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own,
Right.
if that makes sense.
The fun in life is that we can all get along and play in the same sandbox together,
Right.
as opposed to being alone. Yeah.
I absolutely love this conversation and I hate to cut it short. And we are running out of time. So I'm going to ask for you for this coming year, 30 seconds or less. what is something that you are taking forward with you into this coming year to either process through or move into, or, like what really is calling you for this coming year? 30 seconds or less. Lori,
Think I
I'm
can
going to
do that.
put you on the spot.
I think it was your latest podcast, 175, where Stephanie said something to the effect of, may not be a hired leader in our realm right now, but we are all leaders from where we are, and I've always believed that. So this is the year of really strong leadership for me, to bring that soulful aspect and getting along well aspect to leadership.
I love that. And you're from the future, because that's actually going to be our next podcast. So stay tuned, because you just got a preview into podcast 176.
That's awesome. Awesome, awesome.
Dave, something for you.
We just on this podcast so far, we've talked about emotional intelligence. We've talked about intellectual intelligence. We've even talked about positive intelligence. I'm going very much into 2025 and probably the rest of my life with artificial intelligence as my focus. This is a new thing for me, and it's a big change. It's a whole new uh, vocation, everything. So that's my big thing going forward. It's my intention for the new year. It's my intention for this new year, I should say, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to look back at my old stuff anymore. I realize that everything I've done so far, I've had so many different kinds of jobs, and they all culminate and they all come together and they all belong in the AI world. And so this is like a big revelation for me right now as I'm talking to you. And so I think my 30 seconds are almost up, but yeah, I'm I'm walking down that road because it's fun.
I love
So
it.
you're embracing new technology to support your unfolding.
Yeah.
Love it. Stephanie, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to practice. I'm practicing lightening up and letting go, and that I don't have to figure everything out. And that old saying of like, don't just do something, don't just sit there, do something. I'm reversing it, like what Dave said earlier. Don't just do something. Just sit
Sit
there.
there.
And because the best things that have happened to me have come into my life. And so I want to have more of a presence of noticing when something good is coming into my life so I can really truly receive it and grow with it and from it.
Beautiful. I
And
think
you?
for myself, it's being present to the rhythms. It's like I've become more and more knowing, like that internal knowing, not just like, oh, I know that, but like when you really feel something, of being in tune with the cycles. Like I am a part of nature. And so all of her cycles are cycles that I also experience. And no matter how much I try to separate myself from that with like artificial light and artificial this and artificial that, like I still am part of nature. So there's an impact and there's an influence and there's an integration. So I'm going to say for me, this coming year is about integrating even further into those cycles and really like being present to them.
Awesome.
This has been such a joy. Like I said, I could chat with you guys forever. And luckily for me, I get to. We will be back in 2 weeks with our next podcast, which you got a preview from, Lori. Thank you very much. So we'll look forward to that. And please do me a favor and do let us know, what are your intentions for this coming year? How are you going to lighten up? Where does the play fit in your life for this year? Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks on the Soulful Leader podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.